the afternoon of June 30th, 1916, and the loudest sound in the history of the world is still going. The British guns have been firing for 7 days, not in salvos, not in waves, continuously. 1,500 field guns and howitzers and heavy pieces strung along 18 miles of front, throwing 1.5 million shells across the chalk valleys of the Somme. The earth shakes in Albert, the earth shakes in Amiens. In the villages behind the line, plates rattle off shelves and stay on the floor because no one bothers to pick them up. They will only fall again in an hour. You are standing in a forward trench near the village of Beaumont-Hamel. The sky above you is a brown ceiling of dust and cordite smoke that has not lifted in a week. The sun, when you can find it, is the colour of old brass. The chalk under your boots is white, where it has been freshly cut, and grey-yellow, where the rain and the latrines have done their work. The trench is 6 feet deep. It smells of latrines, of unwashed wool, of the chloride of lime they spread on the dead and on the duckboards in roughly equal quantity. You are 19 years old. You enlisted in September of 1914, which makes you a veteran. Most of the men around you are younger. A staff officer came through this morning with a clipboard and a smile. He told you the bombardment had cut the German wire. He told you the German trenches had been pulverized to chalk and bone. He told you that when the whistles blew tomorrow morning, you would walk, not run, walk, across no man's land at a steady pace, and you would step over the bodies of men who had been killed without ever knowing what hit them. He used the word stroll. He said the heavy work had already been done. He has gone back to his dugout. You can still hear the guns. 18 miles to the rear, in a country house at Beaurepaire, Field Marshal Sir Douglas Haig sits at a writing desk and opens his diary. He is 55 years old. He has the steady, untroubled face of a man who has decided that the plan is the plan. He dips his pen. He writes in a hand that historians will later describe as remarkably even for a man sending 600,000 soldiers into the line. The men are in splendid spirits. Several have said that they have never before been so instructed and informed as to the nature of the operation before them. He closes the diary. He has dinner at 7. Back in the forward trench, a runner comes down the line with a message for your company commander. He is breathing hard. He has come from a wiring party that went out the night before to inspect the damage in front of the German lines. You hear the message before the officer does, because runners in 1916 do not bother with discretion. The wire is not cut. In long sections it is not even damaged. The week-long bombardment has thrown it into the air and dropped it back down in tangles thicker than it was before. The captain reads the note. He folds it. He puts it in his tunic pocket. He says nothing. This is the first thing you should understand about the next 36 hours. The evidence is already in front of the men with the authority to act on it. The patrols have been reporting back since June 26th. The wire is intact in long stretches. The German frontline trenches are damaged, but the deep dugouts, 30, 40 feet down in the chalk, reinforced with concrete and timber, are untouched. The German artillery, which the British counter-battery fire was supposed to have silenced, has been firing back all week. Anyone in the forward line can hear it. The shells are still landing in the British rear. Field kitchens are being hit. Horse lines are being hit. Men are dying behind the line while the army that is killing them is supposed to be dead. The reports go up the chain. The reports stop somewhere. At 4th Army Headquarters, General Sir Henry Rawlinson knows that the wire is not entirely cut. He has been told. He has also been told that his own preferred plan, a limited bite-and-hold operation with shorter objectives and concentrated fire, has been overruled by Haig in favour of something larger and faster. Rawlinson does not like the plan. He is going to execute it anyway. He writes in his own diary that same afternoon a line that will be quoted by every historian of the battle for the next 100 years. He writes that he is not quite confident of success. He executes the plan anyway. The shells keep falling. The men in the forward trench are issued their kit for the morning. Each man will carry 66 pounds, a rifle, a bayonet, 220 rounds of ammunition, 2 mils bombs, a pick or a shovel strapped to the pack, a waterproof sheet, a mess tin, a water bottle, field dressings, a gas helmet in a satchel at the chest, 2 days' rations, a flare in some cases, A wire cutter, in others, issued to a small number of men in each platoon, which is the official acknowledgement, never said aloud, that the wire might not be fully cut. 66 pounds. The average British infantryman in 1916 weighs around 140 pounds without his kit. He is being asked to carry roughly half his own body weight across 700 yards of churned chalk in daylight at a walking pace into rifle and machine gun fire. The justification for the weight is the assumption the men will not need to run because there will be no one alive to run from. You eat your rations at sundown, bully beef and biscuit. The biscuit is hard enough to crack a tooth and the men have learned to soak it in tea, but the tea ration is short tonight because the field kitchens are working overtime to push hot food forward. There is rum. The rum ration is generous tonight. The men drink it. Some of them sleep. Most of them do not. The bombardment slows around midnight. Not stops, slows. The heavy guns continue to fire on rear targets while the field artillery shifts to maintain pressure on the front line. The sky to the east flickers like a slow electrical storm. You can read a letter by the light of it, if you have a letter. Some of the men do. They are writing the ones they have not finished. A few of them are writing the last ones. They do not know which is which. In the German lines, 300 yards away, the men of the 119th Reserve Regiment and the 26th Reserve Division are not dead. They are tired. They have been pressed into the deep dugouts for a week, listening to the British shells crack the world open above them, eating cold rations, sleeping in shifts, waiting. The dugouts are sometimes 30 feet down. The shelling does not reach them. The shelling has, in fact, made their position stronger by cratering the ground between them and the British, by making the approach harder, by churning the chalk into a moonscape that funnels any attacker into the lanes. The German machine gunners have already ranged. The Germans know the attack is coming. They have known for weeks. The British have been visibly stockpiling shells, visibly moving troops, visibly cutting assembly trenches in the chalk. The bombardment itself is the announcement. When a week-long barrage ends, an infantry attack follows. This is not a secret. This is not a guess. The German officers have written it down in their order books. They have rehearsed the response. The machine gun teams have their fields of fire pre-registered.
Ja, Herr Oberst. Die Schlager auf Abschnitt 14 sind eingetragen.
The artillery has its targets pre-plotted on the British assembly trenches. They are waiting for the silence. The silence is the signal. It is now the small hours of July 1st. The men in the forward trench have been awake all night. The rum has worn off. The biscuit has worn off. The light to the east is beginning to come up, first as a thinning of the dark, then as a grey wash, then as a clean line behind the German positions, which the men can see in silhouette for the first time in a week. The bombardment intensifies again at 5 in the morning, the final hour. The guns throw everything they have left. The chalk valleys roar. The brown ceiling of dust thickens until you cannot see 50 yards. At 6:25 a.m, a runner comes down the line with the final orders. Watches are synchronized. Ladders are checked. The wire cutters are issued where they are going to be issued. The officers move down the line and speak to each man by name where they can. Some of them shake hands. Some of them do not, because they have learned not to. At 7:20 a.m, a single enormous detonation rolls down the line from the north. The Hawthorne Ridge Mine, 40,000 pounds of ammonal, packed into a tunnel driven under the German redoubt above Beaumont Hamel. It has been timed to go up at 7:28, 2 minutes before the infantry advance, so the Germans will not have time to reoccupy the crater. It has gone up 8 minutes early. The reason it has gone up 8 minutes early is an argument between officers about the safety of detonating it any closer to 0 hour. The earlier time has been chosen. The Germans, who heard the tunnelling, who have been waiting for the mine, who have evacuated the redoubt in anticipation, watch the chalk go up 200 feet into the air and come back down in a slow grey rain. They have 8 minutes to climb out of their dugouts and run their machine guns up to the lip of the new crater. They use the 8 minutes. At 7:25, the British artillery lifts off the German front line. The barrage rolls forward on a timetable toward the second line. It does not know what is happening above it. It cannot know. The plan is the plan. The guns stop. For the first time in 7 days, the world is quiet. You can hear in that quiet things you have not heard in a week. You can hear a man breathing next to you. You can hear the rasp of his bayonet against his scabbard. You can hear, somewhere far down the line, an officer laughing, a short, bright laugh, cut off. You can hear birds. There are birds on the Somme, even now. They have been singing all week, but no one has heard them. You can hear them now. You can also hear, from the German lines, the unmistakable sound of machine guns being mounted on parapets. The double clack of the Maxim mount engaging, the slide of the belt being fed, the voices of the gunners calling ranges to each other in German, perfectly clearly across 300 yards of suddenly silent ground. The officer next to you blows his whistle. You climb the ladder. The top of the ladder is the lip of the world. You come up into a kind of light you have not seen in 7 days. The dust is settling. The brown ceiling is thinning. The morning is, against all reason, beautiful. Clean blue showing through above, a low mist in the hollows of no man's land. The chalk between the lines very white where the shells have turned it over. Wildflowers along the back lip of the trench. Poppies, cornflowers. A skylark somewhere overhead. Climbing. You step out onto the fire step. You step over the parapet. You begin to walk. The order is to walk. The order is specific. A steady pace, dressed by the right, 2 yards between men, no running, no bunching, no dropping for cover. The justification for the order is the assumption that there is no one alive in the German line to fire at you. The assumption is being disproved at this moment, all along 18 miles of front, by the sound that begins as you take your 4th step into the open. It is not one machine gun. It is not 10. It is the entire German front line opening up at once. The Maxim gun, in 1916, fires roughly 450 rounds per minute. The Germans have, by conservative estimate, around 100 of them along this stretch of front, supplemented by the rifles of an unknown number of men who were supposed to be dead and who are not dead. The mathematics of what is happening to the first wave is being computed in real time by the bodies of the men around you. They are not falling the way men fall in pictures. They are folding. They are sitting down. They are dropping their rifles and walking 3 more steps, and then pitching forward as if their knees have been removed. Some of them are running back toward the British line and being shot in the back. Some of them are lying very flat against the chalk and not moving, and they are not dead. They have learned in the first 10 seconds that the only chance is to be mistaken for dead, and they will lie there until nightfall. You keep walking. The order is to walk. To your right, a man named Wilkins. You have shared a dugout with him for 3 months. He is from Salford. He has a wife and a daughter named Annie, takes a bullet through the throat and goes down without a sound. You do not stop. The order is to walk. The man behind you steps over Wilkins's body and keeps the line dressed. This is the British Army of 1916. This is what the 7 days of training behind the line were for. The line holds because the line has been told to hold. The wire is in front of you now. 60 yards, 50. The wire is not cut. In long sections, it is not even thinned. The week-long bombardment has shifted it, lifted it, dropped it back down in tangles that are in places higher than a man's chest. Where shells have hit it directly, the wire has been thrown into the air and come down twisted around itself in coils tighter than the original belt. The wire cutters issued to the platoon are useless against this. They are designed for single strands. This is not single strands, this is a hedge. The men in front of you have nowhere to go. They cannot go through. They cannot go around. The lanes that have been cut have been pre-registered by German machine gunners who are firing into them at this moment. They cannot go back without being shot in the back. They do what men in that situation have done in every war since the invention of the machine gun. They bunch. They look for the gap. They die at the wire. You can see from where you are the tangles already strung with the bodies of the men from the first minute of the attack. They are hanging from the wire in the postures of men who tried to climb it. Some of them are still alive. They are calling for their mothers. They are calling for water. They are calling, in some cases, for the German gunners to finish them in voices that are perfectly clear across the chalk, and the German gunners are doing it. 300 yards behind you, in a forward headquarters dug into the reverse slope, a brigadier is reading the first message that has come back from the line. The message says, "First wave heavily checked, wire uncut in front. Request artillery support." He does not have the authority to halt the second wave. The second wave has already been ordered forward on the timetable, 10 minutes after the first. He could try to get a message to the battalion commanders. He could try to telephone 4th Army headquarters. The telephone lines, which were laid by signal companies in the days before the attack and buried 6 feet deep along the communication trenches, have been cut in dozens of places by German counter-battery fire that was supposed to have been suppressed. He sends a runner. The runner is a 19-year-old private from Newcastle. He has 30 pounds of message satchel and field kit, and he has to cover a 1.5 miles of communication trench that is now under direct German artillery fire, because the German guns have shifted to the British rear the moment their own front line came under attack. The runner goes. The runner takes a piece of shrapnel through the femoral artery at the 800-yard mark and bleeds out in a communication trench called Mash Valley before he can deliver the message. A second runner is sent. The second runner gets through. The message arrives at 4th Army headquarters at 8:20 in the morning.
Urgent dispatch from the front, sir. Thank you. Let's see.
By 8:20 in the morning, the second wave has already gone over the top. This is the shape of the next 6 hours. The men in the trenches are sending back messages that the attack has failed. The messages are taking 40 minutes, an hour, 2 hours to arrive. By the time they arrive, the next wave has already been committed on the timetable, because the timetable was the plan, and the plan does not have a mechanism for the plan being wrong. There are battalions in reserve trenches who can hear perfectly clearly the sound of what is happening to the men in front of them. They can see the wounded coming back. They can see the men who are not coming back. They are ordered forward at the appointed hour. They go forward. They die in the same places. Had the wire-cutting reports been believed on June 28th, had the bombardment been extended by 48 hours, had the assault been postponed, had any one of the men with the authority chosen to look at the evidence in front of them, the day would have looked different. The script does not know how different. The script does not get to know. The attack continues.
All right, lads, over the top!
In the small village of Beaumont Hamel, the 1st Battalion of the Newfoundland Regiment is in a reserve trench called St. John's Road, 300 yards behind the British front line. They are not Newfoundlanders in the British sense. Newfoundland in 1916 is a separate dominion, a country in its own right, and the regiment is its first and only contribution to the war on this scale. 800 men. Fishermen from Bonavista Bay, loggers from Gander, school teachers from St. John's. They have been in France for 3 months. At 9 o'clock in the morning, the brigade headquarters above them does not know what is happening at the front. The telephone lines are cut, the runners are not coming back. What they can see is that the first attack on Beaumont Hamel has stalled, and what they have been told is that the village must be taken. They order the Newfoundlanders forward. The Newfoundlanders cannot reach the British frontline trench because the British frontline trench is full of the dead and dying from the first wave, and the communication trenches forward are jammed. The order is given to advance from St. John's Road directly. They will have to cross 300 yards of open ground before they even reach no man's land. From there, another 400 yards to the German wire. They climb out of the trench at 9:05. The German machine gunners, who have been watching the British line for 3 hours now and who have run out of targets, see them coming from 300 yards behind the front line. The Newfoundlanders are silhouetted on the skyline. They are walking through gaps that have been cut in their own wire to allow them through. The gaps funnel them. The machine guns find the gaps. The Newfoundland Regiment takes 30 minutes to cease to exist as a fighting formation. Of the 800 men who climbed out of St. John's Road, 68 will answer the roll call the next morning. Some of the missing will be found alive in the days that follow. Wounded men who lay in shell holes for 2 or 3 days before crawling back. Most will not. The regiment loses in a single half hour around 90% of the men engaged. A century later, The ground at Beaumont Hamel is preserved by the Government of Canada as a memorial park. The trenches are still there. The chalk has been allowed to grass over, but the shape of the ground is unchanged. You can stand in St. John's Road and look across to the German line and see exactly what those men saw at 9:05 on the morning of July 1st, 1916. The distance is not abstract. It is the distance from one fence to another. A skylark, on most mornings, is still climbing. By noon, the casualty clearing stations behind the British line are full. By noon, they are past full. The wounded are being laid on stretchers in the fields outside the dressing stations because there is no more room inside. The walking wounded are walking back along the communication trenches in a column that the war diarists will later describe as endless. The medical officers, who had been issued forecasts of casualties in the low thousands, are looking at numbers that do not fit the forecasts and are not bothering anymore to keep the count. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the message has begun to reach 4th Army headquarters that the attack has failed along most of the line. There has been a small success in the south, where the French and the British 30th and 18th Divisions have taken their objectives, because the French artillery, more concentrated and more accurate, has actually destroyed the German positions in front of them. The rest of the line has not moved. In some places it has moved 100 yards. In some places it has moved nothing. By 4 in the afternoon, the staff officers at 4th Army are reading the casualty estimates. The estimates are not casualty counts. There has not been time to count. The estimates are based on the proportion of men reported missing from each battalion that has reported in, multiplied across the battalions that have not reported in, and the estimates are wrong. They are too low. The true figure for the first day of the Battle of the Somme, established only in the weeks that follow, as the missing are slowly resolved into the dead and the prisoners, and the very few who come back, is 57,470 British casualties. Of those, 19,240 are dead. 19,240 men dead in a single day. The bloodiest day in the history of the British Army. It will not be exceeded. It will not be approached. But the number that matters at 4 in the afternoon on July 1st is a smaller and more specific one. It is the number of staff officers at 4th Army headquarters who have seen the reports and who understand what the reports mean. It is a small number. It is large enough. At 6 in the evening, a staff officer at 4th Army receives a written report from a brigade in the northern sector. He reads it. The report describes uncut wire, intact German positions, machine gun fire from positions the bombardment was supposed to have destroyed, and casualty rates in the first wave that he has never seen on a piece of paper in his career. He folds the report. He puts it in a wire tray on the corner of his desk. He says nothing. The plan is the plan. The attack will continue tomorrow morning. The same divisions where they can still be assembled. The same objectives where they have not been quietly written off. The same assumptions, although the assumptions are now being held by men who have read the reports and chosen to leave the reports in the tray. That is the 36 hours. The bombardment ended on the morning of July 1st at 7:20. The first attack failed by 8. The second wave was committed before the first failure was known. The third was committed before the second was known. The Newfoundlanders crossed open ground at 9:05. By noon, the dressing stations were past full. By 4, the estimates were on paper. By 6, the reports were in the wire trays. The Battle of the Somme would continue for 4 more months. It would advance the British line by 6 miles at its deepest point. It would cost, by its end in November, more than 400,000 British and Commonwealth casualties, around 200,000 French, and a German figure that has been argued by historians for 100 years, and that is probably around 450,000. The first day's losses, the 19,240, would be folded into a larger and more abstract number. The men would become a statistic. The statistic would become a sentence in a textbook. The Newfoundland Regiment was rebuilt. It was rebuilt from drafts from home. It fought again at Gaudecourt 3 months later. It was rebuilt again. It was rebuilt again. Of the men who went over the top from St. John's Road on the morning of July 1st, 1916, The names are inscribed on a bronze caribou that stands above the preserved trenches at Beaumont-Hamel. Some of the names are followed by the words, "known unto God." There are a great many of those. The men in the wire could not be recovered. The men in the shell holes could not be found. In a country house at Beaurepaire on the evening of July 1st, Field Marshal Sir Douglas Haig opened his diary again. He wrote of the day's casualties, that they could not be considered severe in view of the numbers engaged and the length of front attacked. The diary entry is preserved. It is in the National Library of Scotland. The handwriting is remarkably even. He had dinner at 7. 300 miles to the west, in a forward dressing station that had run out of morphine by 11 that morning, a chaplain was moving along a line of stretchers laid in a field. He was reading names off the identity discs. Where there was no identity disc, he was writing unknown in his book. He would write it, before the night was over, 203 times. He would put the book in his coat pocket, and he would not be able to look at it for a week. The skylark, sometime in the late afternoon, had stopped singing. It had been a clean blue morning.